Right, so what we're going to do today is just a quick bit of batch cooking. So what I personally do is I do a big batch of mince and then I can break it down into individual meals. So I just want to go through the ingredients first. I've just got 1 white onion diced, 2 cloves of garlic finely diced, 1 sprig of rosemary chopped, 6 rashers of streaky bacon. I use smoked, again chopped. Now I do a mixture of beef and pork mince. You don't have to, you can just do beef mince if that's what you prefer. I like the two together, so I've got half a kilo of beef mince, half a kilo of pork mince. I've got a jar of sun-dried tomatoes which I've finely chopped, drain off the oil and then finely chop them. And I've got 2 tins of chopped tomatoes and a large glass of red wine. So that's the basis of my mince meal. Right, so now we're ready to start cooking. So we start off by putting the onion, garlic, rosemary and bacon into either a big saucepan or a frying pan. I find it easier in the wok just because you can, get everything nice and stirred and there's quite a lot of surface area, so it's just easier for you to get it cooking. So we're just going to do this for a couple of minutes, just until the onions start softening. You're not worried about it all fully cooking, but you just want the onions to start softening. So what I do with this is I make a big batch of this, like this one that we're making here, and then at the end of cooking, once it's cooled down, I then portion it, all depending as to what I'm going to make, into 2 or 3. So with 1 portion, I'll just add some diced cooked carrot, maybe a handful of frozen peas, top it with some mashed potato, and that's a cottage pie. So with the other piece of it, then I'll add some kidney beans and some chilli, and then that's my chilli that I can then serve with rice. As it is, once it's just cooked, you could use that for spaghetti bolognese, you could put it into a lasagna if that's what you wanted. Again, you could add some Italian herbs. You can add whatever herbs you want. I mean, I quite like the base with rosemary, but you can add whatever herbs you want. You could add some Mexican herbs into it once you've portioned it. So with 1 portion, you could add some Mexican herbs into it, put some refried beans into it and serve them on tortillas, and that could be your Mexican meal. So once you've got this base, really, you've got, a good sort of 3, 4, maybe 5 things that you can do with it. You can just serve it on a jacket potato if you wish. It's just versatile, so you've just got this one lot of cooking, and then with slight tweaks you've then got family meals for a few days that you can just pop in the freezer. So this is now sizzling nicely. That's lovely. So as I say, it doesn't have to be fully cooked. We just want the onions to start softening, which don't really take any time at all. The bacon's now starting to have a sizzle. So now we're just going to go up with the heat a bit. And we're going to go in with our pork and beef mince. As I say, you can use just beef mince if that's what you wish. You can add pork mince. I quite like the two together, but it's just down to personal preference, whatever you can get hold of. Just use whatever you can get. You can use whatever. I'm sure you could do this with lamb mince, and then instead of making a cottage pie, you could make a shepherd's pie. It's just really down to you. Do you see why I use a wok now? Because we need quite a bit of room. So you do need quite a large saucepan. So now we're just going to keep breaking up the mince with your wooden spoon. It will, as it cooks, it will break up anyway. And this is quite finely minced beef mince. If it's thicker, you may need to break it up a little bit more. But the fine mince does tend to break down. So again, you're not cooking this through. You're just sort of breaking it up and browning the mince slightly. So this is great because you do this once, and then, as I say, you can freeze it, and then you've got you've got your meals for the week, or what I tend to do, so we're not having mince all the time, is, you know, I'll alternate it, but I know that in the freezer I'm going to have some chilli and maybe a lasagna, you know, maybe some Mexican mince. So it's always handy knowing what you've got. So there we go, that's starting to take on some colour now. So this is quite lean mince as well, so we're not going to have a load of fat from it. And it's worth really getting lean mince if you can, because you don't want it all oily and fatty, and some of the mince actually has quite a high fat content, which is great for burgers and great for doing certain things, but you don't really want this sort of swimming in oil and fat. So that's starting to break up nicely now. There's not a lot of hands-on for this recipe either. It's nice and simple. This is the longest part really, is just sort of trying to break up your mince as the heat gets to it. Now some people would cook this on a high heat to make sure it's all browned, but I don't think you need to, because this is actually quite a rich dish. Once we've added the wine and the tomatoes and the sun-dried tomatoes, it's actually quite a rich dish anyway, so you don't necessarily need to get that caramelised dark brown on the mince. But we're nearly there. I'm just going to give it a bit more breaking up. In an ideal world I would have done it on my bigger hob ring, but that's at the back, so that's not as easy to get the camera to. But this is fine, it's still sizzling away nicely. That's it, getting some colour as well on it now. So we've still got some pink, but that's not the end of the world. We'll just get rid of a little bit more, just so the majority of it has browned off. So you can see the texture changed already on that, and the bacon, the smoked bacon, makes this, it kind of gives it a whole depth of flavour, the smoked bacon. That's the one thing I wouldn't leave out. The herbs, you know, you can do whichever ones you wish, but I really wouldn't leave out the smoked bacon personally. I think it just sort of gives it that little underlying smokiness to the whole dish. Right, so we're nearly there. Yeah, it's lovely. So your hard work is now done, because all we do now is we go in with our large glass of wine, and again, you know, use whichever wine you want. It doesn't have to be, I use quite a full bodied red wine, but I really sort of like that red winey flavour. But just use whichever you wish. It's, you know, this isn't a recipe that you have to follow, it's just an idea. So now we go in with our beautiful sun-dried tomatoes. Again, they add a real sort of sweetness to it. It's a beautiful flavour. Get those in there. Then we go in with our tinned tomatoes. You don't have to use chopped tomatoes, you can use whole tomatoes and chop them yourself, or you can put whole tomatoes in and just mash them down as it cooks. So what we do now is we just give that a big stir, and what we're going to do is we're just going to bring it to the boil and then reduce it down to a simmer and let it simmer away with a lid on, so a low simmer, for about an hour, and by that time it'll all be thoroughly cooked and we'll have taken on all those beautiful flavours. Just give that, that's it, that's all nicely stirred in. See, the mince will also break down in the hours cooking as well. So, as I say, what we're going to do, we're just going to bring it to a boil, drop it down to a low simmer and let it simmer away nice and gently for an hour. Right, so this has now been blipping away nicely for the last hour, and as you can see it's all thick and beautiful. All of the mince has broken down, so there aren't any big bits of mince, it's just all broken down lovely. So that's it. So that's my mince base. There's quite a lot here actually. So as I say, that can now become a lasagna, a cottage pie, a chilli, Mexican mince on tortillas, on jacket potatoes, whatever you wish. But that's just a lovely base to now portion up, freeze and start with your meal planning for your midweek meals. Enjoy.